Hello guys, Chris here and welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, I'm going to be testing a GeForce RTX 3080 Ti 12GB GPU in Hogwarts Legacy. This one is the Founders Edition model of the card. We are running it with the latest Nvidia drivers and I am not overclocking it. It already consumes way too much power. And over in Tech Power-Ups GPU-Z, you can see all of the GPU specs. Resizable bar is also enabled. Finally, over on the left, we're pairing it with an i5-13600K and 32GB of RAM, DDR5 6000 MHz in dual channel. Let's get into it now, shall we? Oh yes, and as you can see in the overlay, the CPU is overclocked to 5.6 GHz across all cores, and it is looking fantastic right here, the game, you know. Look at those dynamic shadows on the ground. Wow, it looks really nice, this game on ultra settings. That's what we're using right here because it's the recommended preset for the 3080 Ti, and we're playing at native 4K resolution at the moment with Nvidia DLSS technology, which looks way better than TAA on high or low, and actually performs a little bit better than TAA on high. So let's do this now. Let's walk around Hogsmeade first, which is this area right here. This is super CPU intensive, and that GPU utilization is actually fluctuating a little bit, but that's not because of a CPU bottleneck, because as we'll see in lower resolutions, it isn't really CPU bound here at 4K ultra settings. Obviously, we're fully GPU bound at the moment. The 3080 Ti is the bottleneck in the system, you could say. Now, we're getting around 60 frames per second right here, which is quite nice. I honestly was expecting the 3080 Ti to do a little bit worse of a job here, but yeah, it seems to be pretty stable and playable. Well, that stable part might not be as true right now because that frame time graph had a massive stutter right there, but you know, that's just the game. They actually kind of fixed it a little bit recently with a patch, so it stutters less than previously, but you can see that that frame time, at least here in Hogsmeade, is completely crazy, right? Like, yeah, I don't like that too much, obviously. I would much rather have a well-optimized title, even if that costs us a little bit of FPS. Look at that huge stutter right there. Yeah, I mean, I would much rather have like 45 FPS stable without any stuttering whatsoever than this. This area right here, by the way, is also super GPU intensive, and you can see it dropping into the lower 40s at times. So Hogsmeade, a lot of people like to say that that's the worst optimized area in the game, and it kind of is for CPU performance, but GPU performance-wise, why is it stuttering so much, dude? It's kind of unplayable, honestly. Is it the 12 gigabytes of VRAM or something? What the hell? This is crazy. Kind of annoying me a little bit because I thought it was gonna be smooth after we went to Hogsmeade, but nope, it is still a stuttery mess. So I guess we gotta use some DLSS, lower the resolution to around 1440p, as you can see on quality, and this still looks pretty much similar to native resolution using the LAA. Maybe slightly, very slightly softer, but you can't really tell a difference on like 32-inch or 27-inch 4K monitor. Oh my god, 69 FPS right away, that is perfect. Okay, hopefully, yeah, that VRAM usage went down, so we're not VRAM bound anymore, and hopefully it's not gonna stutter anymore, because that was really terrible there. I thought it was gonna be like a somewhat stable experience at 4K native, because, you know, in other games it actually is with 3080 Ti, even if they drop from 60 frames per second a bit, but no, that was just terrible completely. Now, using DLSS, again, that VRAM is not maxed out anymore, RAM usage is still pretty high, and you can see a lot more frames per second and a lot better stability. It's not stuttering as much, although we have already seen a big spike in that frame time graph. But, you know, that's completely normal. I've also seen those with the 4080, which is a 16 gigabyte GPU. And also, if you're wondering about ray tracing, I will test it a little bit at the end of this video, but it's not a good idea in this game. Like, the game literally froze when I was using the 4080 a couple of times in like 3 minutes time or something like that. Here, using the DLSS at 4K, things are much better. and I could definitely enjoy the game like this. And honestly, if you have a 4K monitor with a 3080 Ti, this is probably the way to go, guys, because it looks really good. First of all, really sharp and detailed, the same, I would say, as native resolution, aside from, like, some of the bushes are looking quite soft at the distance, but, you know, it's a minor thing. And it is way smoother. You know what? We should try it out in Hogsmeade again, because that was really intensive. Here we go. Now the GPU usage is actually down there. Look at that, 80-something%, 66% at times. So now it is actually a CPU-bound scenario, I think. Or maybe it was just loading something, because now it's back to 94, 95%, same as native resolution. Okay, whenever it has a big stutter, it drops a little bit GPU utilization, but that's completely normal, because in that split second, the GPU doesn't have to work as hard. At native resolution, it's not a CPU bottleneck here, even though GPU usage is not completely maxed out. I think this CPU can do slightly higher FPS than these. It's dropping into the 80% range, that GPU utilization, though, so I'm not sure about that, but yeah, I think I saw it already getting around 100 frames per second there. But it is pretty close anyways, so we might actually be seeing a CPU bottleneck scenario. Also, if you want to get rid of those little frame time spikes that happen here in Hogsmeade, you can lock the FPS in the Nvidia control panel or Rivetuner statistics server. It won't get rid of those huge spikes, but that inconsistent frame time graph over here will be smoothed out and be a flat line if you lock the FPS. Not with the built-in lock inside of the game, by the way. With that, it just gets kind of wrecked, actually. It's worse than with unlocked frames per second for some reason. Okay, I needed to restart because since the game doesn't have a dedicated full screen mode, I need to set it in the desktop to 1440p, and it is at 1440p now, with DLAA again, no DLSS at the moment, using the same ultra settings. Back to Hogsmeade, and ooh, so apparently it wasn't a CPU bottleneck after all at 4K with DLSS quality, because the 13600K can do more than 100 frames per second sometimes here in this area. As I told you, it gets around like 100 FPS, as I've seen in previous videos of mine. Oh my god, why is it dropping so much? It dropped to 60 and 50. This game's completely broken. What the heck? Oh my goodness. Yeah, apparently in this area it can drop quite a bit if you're moving. If you're not moving, it gets close to 100, but the second you start moving, everything goes to hell, kind of. Not anymore. Maybe it was just loading something. I just don't know, guys. This game is just completely weird. So if you're running a 1440p monitor with a 3080 Ti, you will need a really beefy CPU to get these kinds of performances. Why performances in plural? I don't know. Let's keep on going. So let's get out of Hogsmeade, because this is more of a CPU intensive scenario. Same for Hogwarts, by the way. If you go inside of the castle, it will stutter even more than over there, but the FPS are generally higher inside of the castle. Let's go down there to the really dense bit of forest area and see how much it drops. Remember, at native 4K over here, it dropped into the lower 40s, and now at native 1440p, well, it's well above 60 frames per second at all times. So this is what I expect from a 3080 Ti at 1440p. This was a really beastly card back when it released 2 years ago. It was 2021, I think. And it's still a beast, you know. This game is intensive, and you can play it at 4K with DLSS quality. Balanced DLSS at 4K looks almost the same as quality, but quality already performs really well, always above 60, so no worries there. And at 1440p, well, it doesn't have a problem in any single game out there. You can completely max out everything aside from ray tracing at native 1440p in pretty much all of the games and get 60 plus FPS all of the time with the 3080 Ti. Still a really strong GPU even in 2023. That's to be expected. It was an extremely strong GPU back when it released, and it wasn't really that long ago, so yeah. Alright, so let's try it out with some DLSS on quality. Gonna bump up that sharpness a little bit. And you know what? DLSS on quality actually looks better than native resolution using TAA. It's not better than using DLAA, But yeah, it is better than the TAA implementation here, which is extremely blurry. So since we can adjust the sharpness using DLSS quality, I would much rather have this experience than native resolution, weirdly. In some other games, this also happens. It can look better using DLSS. Anyways, we are well above 100 frames per second now in this not so CPU intensive area. Of course, in Hogsmeade and Hogwarts, things will drop and stutter a bit more. That fog is kind of looking pretty bad, actually. Should we have a little bit of a fight here? Yeah, you know what? Let's do that. Why so much fog, dude? That's over-exaggerated. Okay. If I help these guys, will they be on my side? Okay, no, I just shot one of them, so we can't really put that theory to the test, I guess. Let's go. Expelliarmus! Expelliarmus! Let's throw them rocks and stuff. There we go. Alright, Incendio. I will give you my Incendio as well. Expelliarmus again. Okay, there we go. Everything is fine. We killed Bob as well. Bob was a troll, obviously. And now we're gonna get his loot, which is the other thing. There we go. Troll boogies. It's great, guys. Don't judge, okay? It's very good loot. So it dropped a little bit during the fight, but not as much as it would drop in the Hogsmeade and Hogwarts areas. So that's why I usually don't fight a whole lot in these videos. Over here it's actually dropping more than previously during the fight, as you can see, 100s, 90s. But I would say, yeah, overall, it is a somewhat higher refresh rate experience. If you have a high refresh rate panel, you will feel the smoothness difference between native res and quality DLSS. So it might be very well worth it to play with DLSS enabled here at 1440p.
Sometimes it seems all roads lead to Hogsmeade.
Oh, do they? They do not. I always teleport here. That's why we get here. Otherwise, if I followed roads, we wouldn't be here. Honestly, I would get lost. Anyway, yeah, GPU utilization in Hogsmeade just goes down like crazy. It's a very CPU-bound scenario right now. And what we're testing right now is the 13600K at 5.6 gigahertz. Nothing else. You know, this is not 3080 Ti performance. It could do way better than this if paired with a faster CPU, but there aren't really many faster CPUs than this one, overclocked at least. You could go with like 13900K, but chances are if you are running a 3080 Ti, you probably have like Ryzen 9 5900X, Ryzen 7 5800X 3D, 99 12900K, i7 12700K, and so on. So probably don't have 13th gen, and if you do, I think the sensible choice would be the 13600K anyways, which is a very strong CPU to pair with the 30 series, and even like my 4080 doesn't get bottlenecked by this CPU in a lot of games. So yeah, it's a strong CPU. In fact, it's very close in performance to the previous generation i9 12900K, which was the best CPU available for gaming just a few months ago. So there's that. Last resolution is 1080p using DLAA and the ultra settings again. And at this resolution, I think we will be CPU bound most of the time. Yeah, even here, like this is not a CPU intensive scenario by any means. It's not, well, we are in Hogsmeade, but not looking at it. And it is not maxing out the GPU utilization. It's fluctuating. It's dropping down into the 80% range at times. Let's just walk around here a little bit, see that GPU utilization. It should be very similar to 1440p using quality DLSS, actually. Yeah, 50%, 48% usage. Damn. Yeah, 1080p is just too easy to run, even in newer titles, for something like a 3080 Ti. There's no way around it. I played a lot of games at 1080p for testing purposes, of course, with this GPU when it came out, with my Ryzen 9 5900X at the time. I said it's overkill for 1080p gaming, and it still is. 3080 Ti, 3080... 3090 and 3090 Ti from last generation are super overkill for 1080p gaming. You should only pair those cards with 1440p monitors or 4K monitors, unless you are like a competitive person and you want the maximum FPS possible. In that case, you would actually go towards the AMD GPUs because of the driver overhead in Nvidia cards. But yeah, there are a few people that actually pair this card or these cards that I just mentioned with 1080p monitors for like the highest FPS possible. I just think that the jump from 1080p to 1440p is so huge in terms of visual fidelity, and the performance is not really all that different because you're likely going to be CPU bound at 1080p. That you should just pair it with a 1440p monitor and enjoy that visual bump. It is well worth it, in my opinion, especially in single-player titles like this one. But yeah, as you can see now, we are seeing 100 plus frames per second near these forest areas. 1080p with the 3080 Ti, again, it's overkill. It's going to have high FPS no matter what, and you're likely going to be CPU bound no matter what. It's already CPU bound most of the time, even here, at native resolution, so using DLSS shouldn't really bump up our performance by a whole lot. I'm going to try it out a little bit, though. Here we are, quality, and bump up that sharpness again. And we should be seeing around the same results, maybe like 10 FPS more or so. That's pretty impressive, but sometimes in heavily CPU-bound scenarios, it's going to be the same. You're getting 90s, 100s, lower 100s at times. Yeah, I guess it's the same thing, right? With slightly lower GPU utilization now with DLSS. But yeah, oh boy, 1% lows F69, that was beautiful. Look at that. Oh, yes. Anyways, 1440p or 4K are the way to go, for sure. Now, lastly, we gotta check out some ray tracing. Okay, so we're still at 1080p, guys, with DLAA and the ultra settings with ray tracing enabled on high preset here, which, you know, it's not maximum. Ultra would be the maximum there, and at the native 1080p, it will definitely drop from 60 FPS. Like, this is not an intensive area whatsoever. And it's getting 70s and even dropping into the 60s at times. Look at that, 60s. Yep. So once you get into these dense forest areas, it will drop. Yeah, 59. Maybe it dropped even further than that. I'm not sure. But this is why you shouldn't really use ray tracing. We went from what, a 100 plus FPS experience most of the time when not CPU bound at 1080p without RT, to a 60 plus FPS experience. Now we're in Hogsmeade again. It's stuttering even more than it did previously. I can feel that. There are more of those bigger spikes in the graph, and the FPS are even lower. And ray tracing also impacts CPU performance. So yeah, the CPU is struggling a lot more than 3080 Ti right now. And it's making our FPS drop near 60, and even from 60 sometimes, look at that, with a ton more stuttering than previously. So no matter what resolution you play at, even if you want like 4K with performance DLSS and ray tracing, which the 3080 Ti shouldn't have a problem with, your CPU will be the problem, likely. So yeah, you'll see these insane stuttering issues happen every now and again using ray tracing, and even some lockup issues. And look at that VRAM utilization. It's already nearly maxed out. It's actually at the exact same value as 4K native resolution using ultra settings. And we were starting to be VRAM limited at 4K Ultra native, as you saw in this video. Some games don't really require you to have 11 plus gigabytes of VRAM usage to be VRAM bound. Some of them will actually not fully utilize the frame buffer, yet it's still going to be VRAM bound. I just don't recommend ray tracing. It stutters way too much, and it's not as enjoyable. And if you take a look at the graphics, it looks the same, at least to me. I can't really tell much of a difference. I'm going to go to Hogwarts now. And here in Hogwarts is where, oh my god, it's starting to stutter so much. This is a really intensive scenario for a CPU to handle. You can see GPU utilization is not maxed out here either. But yeah, this is where I think you would see the benefits of ray tracing a little bit more, but you know, those reflections look pretty bad anyways, so I really wouldn't do this, guys. It's not worth it, okay? If it's performing like this at 1080p, at 1440 and 4K, it would be even worse. And that stutter is just insanely terrible. It turns the 3080 Ti and 13600K system into like a 3050 system or something similar to that, with like an i3-12100F, for example. And that's been it. Thank you very much for watching this video. I'll catch you in the next one very soon. And as always, love you all. Bye-bye.